Hey everybody, this is Perch, and talking miniseries. Now, miniseries has been something that's kind of confused people for a long period of time, including the publishers, who I think have run very hot and cold on a miniseries. Why are we doing these? What's going? There's been a number of reasons why miniseries began. Once upon a time, the idea was that we're going to tap a specific creator who we don't have a long-term contract with. We're going to put them on a book that had a pitch that maybe was more from the creator in some cases than the company. Other times it's maybe it's connected in some form or fashion to a movie or a project or something else. And so they wanted to put out this mini series. It made a lot of sense when they were doing the Indiana Jones miniseries for Raiders of the Lost Ark or Temple of Doom, and even Transformers, as an example, started out as a miniseries. And the idea was that we don't necessarily know that we're going to go all in on this project. There's a bunch of history. Transformers, by the way, as a comic, is kind of a completely fascinating thing to go down the rabbit hole in. But anyway, so the idea about a miniseries used to make a little bit more sense. And then somewhere along the line, miniseries got to be kind of events, or maxi series is sometimes called, where it was like, hey, we're going to do this, Secret War. We're going to do, just various things. Avengers versus the X-Men, X-Men versus Fantastic Four. We're going to start to do some of these. And then there was this logic that started to come out and really gain some traction, which was if we put mini series on it, then people are going to not buy it because they're going to know that they're not signing in for an ongoing, which is a very nice, very quaint way of looking at the business. By basically them saying that the people who are coming in to buy our comics are people who want to collect long term, want to actually invest months over month. The entire value and point of comics to them is so that they can collect something, so that they can be part of something that's going to be ongoing. And if you say that it's limited in some fashion, that's actually a big drawback for a lot of companies. And for a lot of companies, a lot of people, not companies, people, companies. Anyway, for a lot of comic buyers, the idea of saying, it's a miniseries is a drawback. Now that was never really true. I think there was mild amount of truth for that when you were talking to companies, not customers. If you were going to, sell your books into Safeway or Kroger or grocery stores, convenience stores, places like that. Now this is where that was the classic newsstand. They were buying the comics to then shuffle it off to the consumers. And for them, mini series, something that was going to end in a relatively short amount of time, was a drawback because they just want to kind of, sell their books and forget about it. And I think this is where a lot of the origin of some of this thinking comes from of, hey, if people know it's a mini series, they're not going to buy in. They weren't talking about you, the customer. They were talking about their other customer, the big chain for the newsstand that basically didn't want to put up with that amount of logistical thinking around comics. They just wanted to buy. Of course, that, by the way, everything I just said is defeated a little bit. It's why I still say it's kind of crap logic people would use, because the way that comics were bought back then was different as well. It wasn't like some guy at Safeway was sitting there going, I think I'll take 20 copies of X-Men and 14 copies of Avengers. That wasn't how comics were sold and dealt with, for that matter. So anyway, it's all those things are all factors. So here's a viewer mail talking about the same kind of topic. It says, hey Perch, I was wondering in a business sense, how viable is a miniseries? I always saw them as if they were movies, since their stories are self-contained stories. Difference is movies are marketed heavily as an event, but miniseries just kind of exist. And again, it didn't used to be that way, but that is kind of how it's evolved for sure. I just don't know why you would make a mini series instead of an ongoing beyond testing out an idea or creator, maybe getting a storyline out, which might not be able to be done in the main line, but how profitable is this anyway? By the way, I was confusing some of this as well, is the fact that a lot of the main line isn't what it used to be. I mean, it used to be, when we talked about mainline ongoing comics, you were talking about things where it was reasonable to assume it's going to hit 100 issues. In fact, once upon a time, if a ongoing comic was less than 50 issues, people asked questions like, what went wrong? What's going on with this comic? It doesn't make any sense that it's only, it's stopping at issue 45. Like what happened here? Like there's somebody who screwed up. That used to be the way it was thought about. Certainly not. That's not the way it's thought about these days, but that used to be kind of the thinking. Anyway, back to the mail. It says, couldn't you just make a Shadows of the Bat-like series that has different storylines every 3 to 8 issues? Well, yeah, you could. It says, why not just put Brian Azzarello in some Shadows of the book instead of a series that ends by issue 3 and all the fans garnered by it just left in the wind when they could just read the next writer, hoping one day Azzarello comes back to the title for another 3 issue stint. Hope this isn't a dumb question. No, it's not a dumb question. I mean, yeah, your logic makes sense. That doesn't mean that your logic making sense is what the comic industry is doing, because logic and that sense is pretty much I don't know, the two are loosely connected. We'll just put it that way. No, it makes sense. I think that would be good business. I think the comic industry convinced itself of a number of things that are ridiculous, and miniseries and how they operate and how they function, and how long they last and all the rest, is a big one. What's weird about comics in general, and what's weird about the miniseries, is that there are people in the publisher, and I struggle to believe this is true, but I promise you it is. Over and over and over again, I get this same response from people in comics. People inside comics believe that the fans, the customers, are not noticing when comics are canceled after a couple issues. That if we do this comic at Marvel and it lasts like 5 issues and then they cancel it, the publisher believes full-heartedly that no customer is actually noticing that the cancellations are happening in this way. Now, in fairness, maybe what they're seeing or thinking is that nobody's noticing that these comics are coming out in the first place, in which case that's probably true in a lot of regards. But no, it's very weird. So many comics at Marvel and DC, for that matter, are miniseries. They're just not labeled that. They're labeled as ongoing, but none of them are really expected to be ongoing, and they just continue to kind of choke them out, for no apparent reason. And and are more or less happy when people drop it's getting its 20,000 sales. And it always feels bad to me when one of the writers or the creative people on this book like really is all for it. The creative team behind Echo was like, hey, we're really hoping this will get a lot of sales so we can we can turn this into an ongoing. It's like, oh man, I'm sorry you believe that. There's no way that's going to happen. Like I feel bad for you for thinking it might. There's no chance. I mean, it felt bad to see those posts. That's the thing that I think is kind of tragic in all this, is that there are creators out there who believe they're getting their start, and if they just do the right things, then off they go, and they're missing the fact that to the publisher, this is a strategy, and this is born of stupid thinking, where it's like, no, we're going to make this into an ongoing. The publisher knows it's unlikely to ever hit issue number 8, but the creator's like, oh wow, you're giving me an ongoing, not a miniseries. Wow, that's great. And to the publisher, they're thinking, well, we just don't want to call it a miniseries because then people won't buy it, which is incorrect and stupid, as we've been talked about. But that's and to your point in the mail, with a lot of these books, particularly Batman, that kind of stuff. The Shadow of the Bat book was a successful title, and it would be perfectly reasonable. The problem is you've got to follow it up with actually putting the creative talent on it that justifies the name. And this is where they tend to not. They're like, hey, we're going to have the top talents on this book, and maybe the first arc and the second arc are by people you've heard of, and then by arc number 3, it's like, here's a brand new rising talent. It's like, no, stop. Just put somebody legit on it, and you'll have yourself a hit book on your hands. But it would make more sense that people would, buy into a book and keep buying it, like in your Brian Azzarello example. The thing, though, that is happening is we're seeing consumer behavior change. If this was 15 years ago, then definitely I think you could count on consumers continuing to buy a book. But so many of these tricks over the years have taught consumers basically, buy in on demand. There's a lot of comic shops that are now adjusting their pull box where you can pull by arc or by storyline rather than ongoing, and that's going to hurt a lot of comics because frankly, there were a lot of comics that were bought simply because people were too lazy to manage their pull box very effectively, and even if they were, they felt bad about taking stuff off of it, like they were hurting a shop, and those days are over, which is a different factor. Anyway, thank you very much for the question. Like and subscribe, of course. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and thanks for listening.